Good morning, everybody. How are all of you today? We're super excited to have the opportunity to get to talk to you guys about this, crazy thing that we do in life called working. And, it takes up a lot of time in our weeks and in our lives. And it's so important that we find the right places to be. And so we're very, very excited to, get to be a part of helping you shape whatever that looks like next in your world. As you can see today, we're going to be talking about career changes and mid-career moves in service design, specific to service design, though a lot of these tools and tips and tricks can be used across many different design fields. Let's see. How do I make this work? There we go. So as some of you or many of you may know, we all three come from Harmonic Design. And Harmonic Design is a US-based consulting firm that specializes in service design. And we use that to inspire organizations to have more human, cooperative, and sustainable services for society. As you're about to hear, right? So the Harmonic team comes from a wide variety of professional backgrounds. Many of us did not either have degrees in service design or start in service design, especially the ladies here that are going to speak to you today. But a big part of our environment is focused on continuous learning, growth, and constantly pushing our practice. Not only are we very, very focused externally on creating cultures of change and innovation for our clients, but we also have a lot of internal initiatives that are facing inward to help us each grow and learn new aspects to our career on a regular basis. As an organization, a big piece of what we do is, have a learning and teaching mindset. And we're always looking to share this with others. And so we're very excited to get the opportunity to share it with you today. Another aspect of Harmonic is that we are a constantly evolving organization. We're trying to always stay ahead and abreast of all of the most important and unique and thought-provoking concepts, frameworks, and tools and philosophies that are out there in the world. So we're going to do a little bit of a lengthy introduction this morning, just because we think it's very important for you guys to have a bit of context around our backgrounds so you can understand where we're coming from when we try to provide you with some guidance and advice today. So I am the head of design strategy at Harmonic Design. I have been practicing service design specifically since 2014, kind of a meld of human-centered design, service design, design thinking, design strategy. But before that, I had a very long and industrious career in media. I've actually been everything from a lighting and production technician, where I used to hang from ceilings and work with an organization that used to tour with KISS called McManus Enterprises, through being a historical preservationist, working on preserving the gates outside the Commerce Building in Washington, D.C., as well as being an award-winning photojournalist and commercial photographer. So I spent a lot of years of my career focused in a lot of other areas. And, throughout my career, what I really noticed was that nothing ever felt right. I kept kind of jumping from different types of things from one to the other. And I was, growing and climbing in my own career. Started off as a freelancer, became a staffer, turned into a director, and then became chief and then became director. I've run multiple media organizations, and I have, grown and mentored many, many media students. But I just never felt like it was the right path for me. And so at some point, probably in my late 20s, early 30s, I was working 4 different jobs and volunteering for 3 different organizations, all in the name of trying to figure out what was next for me. I was teaching photography at University of Akron. I was director of media for a university. I had my own business, photographing different things on the side, as well as I was a professional sports photographer for Associated Press and United Press International. I was also volunteering my time as Rape Crisis Center and Battered Women's Shelter event coordinator and volunteer. I was building programmatic material for youth art students at a local arts center, and amongst various other things. And I did all of these things, partially because I was giving back and doing a lot in my world, but also because I was trying to build skill sets that would allow me to grow out of the photography field. And it was a really, really, really difficult transition for me. One which I was never actually able to do on my own, and ultimately turned to getting a master's degree at Savannah College of Art and Design in design management before I was able to actually transition out into, working in this field. I was really lucky because that degree gave me the opportunity to, at the very end, working with Disney. And so at the time, what was called a CLC and is now called a SCAD Pro, was a huge project working on the guest room experience for Walt Disney. And I was able to, through that working environment, to get my first contract over at Disney, which then transitioned me over to working full-time with Universal Studios in virtual augmented mixed reality. And then I became a consultant in the design thinking, human-centered design and service design world, which is where I've stayed for the last, close to a decade. So it's been quite a wild ride, and I've overcome a lot of hurdles and a lot of difficulties to get here. But I just want you to know that, stay tenacious, stay resilient, and you're going to make it. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Becky Shield.
Ooh, sweet. Thanks, Stephanie. I just got a new title, so I'm not good at remembering it, but there it is. So I can read. Creative and community lead. I've been formally practicing service design for 4 years with Harmonic. But I think like most designers over, 30, you've probably been other design titles. So UX, graphic, hey, remember web design, making apps, products. I have a degree in industrial design from Georgia Tech. I see some friends on this call. Hi, everyone. That's nice of you for joining. And after I graduated, I worked at a zoo for like close to 11 years. That's why there's an elephant behind me. And I realized I needed to go back to school. So I went and got a degree in digital media at Georgia Tech. And I studied really groovy animal-computer interaction where, in a nutshell, I designed video games for orangutans. And I think we're just trying to highlight here that service design is, we all come from very different backgrounds. We've all made this big shift. And we all still have like our passion projects. And I know Stephanie mentioned volunteering. I have a current side project where I'm creating digital art with orangutans. And like, if anyone's here has come from nonprofits, you kind of have weird experience doing a bunch of things, which helps in your career to this day. I used to produce and host online shows about wildlife for children with Google, and I ran $1 million plus social media account, which I still do for Harmonic. So you should follow us on all accounts, please. And Mark too, of course. And then currently I kind of stay in touch with design through the Georgia Tech College of Design Advisory Board, where we're really focusing on outreach and getting a more diverse field involved with service design, which Mariah and I actually actively do with Harmonic too, where we go to high schools in Atlanta and other colleges to kind of get people excited about this as a profession. I think like many of us, we found out through service design. I know we put out a poll either through work or through school, but you kind of find it out. I don't know if most of us went into school specifically to study it. So we're just trying to get it out there that this is a really cool career to be in. And with that, Mariah, take it away.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Mariah Mills. I'm a lead service designer at Harmonic Design. I have also been in service design for about 4 years, leading teams for about 2 years. And I have a similar career path to Stephanie, actually, total coincidence, but I started in film and television myself. I went to film school for undergrad and really got into production design and art department. And that aspect of telling the story of somebody's inner world through creating the world around them. I just loved that ability to do visual storytelling in that way. Ended up working in props and set decoration in New Orleans and New York, a lot of union film and television productions for about 7 years. Boardwalk Empire, White Collar, Girls, to name a few. A lot of B horror movies that I cannot recommend. If you want to know how to low budget make brains, squished up bananas. Tip for the day. Anyway, I had to get out of that field and do something a little bit more that allowed for a little more stable of a lifestyle, for one, but also something that allowed me to be a little bit more creative. And I, was really interested in starting to design things for the real world. So from there, I got a master's degree of industrial design at Georgia Tech. And throughout that experience, really fell in love with design research, with connecting to people and their deeper needs, as well as an experience that I had there that shaped kind of a lot, I think, of my professional career going forward, was getting a job as a teaching assistant and just starting to really love the act of teaching as a way of learning as well. And you can learn so much from working with students. They always bring a different lens to you in the way that they approach things that you're trying to explain. It's a great way to kind of hone your ability to do storytelling and break down complex ideas into more manageable parts. So throughout all of those experiences, even though, I spent 14 years of my professional life, or 10 years or so of my professional life not doing service design, a lot of those skills that I was gaining along the way have transferred and kind of allowed me to move forward pretty quickly once I got into the career of service design. So I'm hoping that this workshop can kind of help some of you out there who are looking at career changing, as well as some of you who find yourself kind of in mid-career with service design chops and you're looking for kind of what's next for you. Find some new ways to frame your experiences and how they influence kind of who you are and how you show up in the design world. And let me get into the slideshow. Okay, so quick agenda, as I mentioned. So we're going to start actually with a little introspective activity. So I'm going to invite all of you to have that paper and pen handy, sorry, notebook, and get a little bit into to your story, your experiences, and then we're going to move forward from that, make it a little more concrete into how you can then use those things in some more traditional storytelling artifacts in the job seeking world. So Stephanie will lead us into some talk about how you can translate that into a resume, portfolio, presentations, things like that. And then we'll get into some questions. So one thing that I kind of stand by, and when I'm interviewing, especially for Harmonic and things like that, is that when you're making that career transition, or you're, kind of in a mid-career point as a designer, it's really important to be able to take any of those past experiences you might have, whether they are, coming from other fields you used to work in, volunteer experiences, or even things in your personal life, like being a parent or things like that, and talk about how they influence your professional strengths. So it's kind of important to me to understand not just that as a designer, you can talk the talk of service design or human-centered design or systems thinking, but what is your unique design perspective and your unique philosophy that you're going to bring to the table that's going to affect how you work, how you do your work, how you lead teams, maybe how you interact with clients, how you mentor others. and just, that special perspective that only you can bring to the table. So that's what this first activity is really going to get into, kind of breaking apart some of those experiences that you might have, and going broad, looking for some things you might not have thought about as professional influences. And then we're going to move those into kind of a more concrete space of how do you then talk about that in a job seeking or career changing setting. Let's see. Waiting for a slide change, sorry. For some reason, it's not wanting to work. Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm going to unveil kind of a series of prompts here that are going to be journaling prompts for you. And we're going to give you a few minutes to respond to each on your own. And they will come up two at a time. So as they do, just choose one and just take a couple minutes to jot down a few things that come to your mind. And really have that mindset of thinking for examples and things you wouldn't typically think of as related to your professional life. All right, so our first two, what is an activity you do in your personal life that gets you into the zone? And what do you love about that activity? Or what is something in your personal life that you're proud of that you wouldn't normally think to talk about in an interview? So just take a couple minutes, jot down some answers to one or both of those. And this is all going to be about kind of building some material to draw from as we move more into the topic of showing up as a designer. All right, so I'm gonna open up the next couple questions for you here. What's the last thing you really got into learning about? Or what's the last thing you taught someone? This question should kind of dig into the heart of what makes you a unique nerd. I think some background music would have been great for this exercise, but unfortunately, background music never comes through sounding good on Zoom at all.
There is actually a trick to make that happen, good music through Zoom.
Oh, of course there is. You know all the tricks. Well, for next time, we'll have to figure that out. All right, this one, there's just one question, but it's got a lot of little pieces, so it's on its own. But take a second to think of yourself 5 years ago. What were you doing in your life? Where were you? What preoccupied you? What were you feeling? And what are some of the biggest ways that you're different today? Reflect a little bit on how those changes happened. And this can kind of get into just thinking about how you experience growth. All right, here's a couple more to choose one from. So what's a contribution that you make to the world around you that is self-driven, something you just do because you're drawn to it? Or describe a time when you were generous. I think in the career conversations, we often talk about our educational background or other, career experiences we've had, things like that. But some of those things that some of your greatest strengths might actually come from aspects of your personal life. And those are some of the biggest things that can make you unique and really share what's unique about you and what you bring to the table. So the last couple, what would you do today if you had a few more hours and boundless energy? I love that one because that, I always wish I had that. And then finally, describe a time when you were grateful to someone who was generous to you. Someone feels like they're in a service design therapy session, I'll take that. All right, so now that you've had a little time to dig around and find some things that might not have been top of your mind to talk about in an interview or on a resume or at an industry event, for example, we're going to take some of those things and start to reframe them now as related to that professional context. So the first one is going to be another little journaling prompt, but take a moment to reflect on the answers that you just gave to some of the previous questions. How do those things influence your point of view or your philosophy as a designer? Take a second just on that one before moving on to anything else on this page. Maybe you can just write down a couple short phrases or words there. Coming into a lead position or a higher level position in design really demands that you have a point of view and a philosophy that drives your practice and that drives how you interact with people. And sometimes those things aren't really obvious even to ourselves. So it is really useful to kind of take a few minutes and reflect on that sometimes. So are there strengths that you have in your personal life that translate to your professional life in ways that other people might not expect or see? That's another one to just consider and reflect on here a little bit. And maybe there's strengths that you've gained through volunteer experiences, through the way you show up with your friends, maybe a challenging relationship you had with a roommate once. These things can kind of come from a lot of places in your life. And then lastly on this one, once you kind of started to think about how all of these elements influence how you show up as a professional, it's good to try to think of specific stories that can show or demonstrate this. I really believe storytelling is the most powerful tool we have as designers, to understand each other, to express our own point of view, our own philosophy, and demonstrate how we show up. So being able to tell a story that communicates one of these prompt answers, think of that as what you're trying to express and illustrate through a story, can be a really great way to connect in a professional setting. So my last challenge to you is, given all the things you've just written about, and this is something, if you've kind of been taking the tactic of sitting back and just thinking through the last things, not really writing them down, I encourage you to write these ones down. Given any of that, how would you answer these kind of generic questions differently from anyone else in this workshop? So what is design, and what do you uniquely bring to a design team? So we'll give a couple minutes to just respond to those and really try to push those to be as unique as you can. All right. So now that you've had a couple minutes to think about those, I would love to hear if anyone came up with something that they want to share, just to throw one of those in the chat. So what's something that only you might answer? And you can use these as starting points. Design is, or what I uniquely bring to a design team is. We'll see if we get some good answers. Or if everyone was just taking this as a general meditation break, that's cool too. Well, not seeing the chat quite blow up yet, but if you want to take a few more minutes to think about it and put something in there before the end of the session, definitely feel free to. I'd be just really excited to hear how you take this and push it in different ways. Oh, we've got a couple of responses here. So design is a way to connect different information. Whoops, it's moving, so it's hard to read. Different information to create solutions. I can always count on my coworker Becky to have an answer like this. What I can bring: red panda stories, fun facts about non-human primates. I know who that came from. Design is the opportunity to incorporate some of those kind, generous moments others have offered to me into the design work I currently do. I love that. That is so beautiful. Thank you for that. Design is helping a team ask and ponder on questions that they didn't even know they had. Kind of like this session. Nice. Reframing a world of limitless choice into a world of curated and aligned choices that help people create the life they want. Okay, great. I guess it just took a few minutes to type, which is great. So I love seeing all these great answers come through that are unique, and that are now, these answers are starting to tell me a little bit about who you are and what the way that you are going to show up. And, you know, if I was looking at your resume or talking to you at an industry event or something like that, these are the things that I would love to hear more about, or that would intrigue me to kind of learn more about where you're coming from. So that's really awesome. Thank you all for sharing some of you here too. So with this, just a couple takeaways from this part of the experience. So just remember that all of your past experiences make you a strong and unique service designer. Continue to write and rewrite that story so that you can confidently, clearly, and comfortably tell your professional story in a way that highlights what gives you an edge. And then work to develop that unique perspective and design philosophy. And another thing to do is, just as you go through your work designing, just notice the different ways that your perspective shows up in your work. So just experiment with different ways to articulate that through storytelling. So with that, we're actually going to move this into even more of a concrete form and talk about some little bit more traditional tools of the trade, getting into careers and jobs. So I'm going to hand it back over to Stephanie to take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mariah. That was a really thought-provoking and fun exercise, and actually a much needed one, because as we move into these next steps of the tactical elements of what it's going to take to kind of set yourself up for a transition, really knowing your uniqueness and what you bring to the table and having a story prepared is distinctly one of the most important things that you can have in your toolkit as you move forward. Like Mariah said, we're going to be talking about some of the very tactical elements. But before we get started, one of the things I do want to say is everything is subjective, right? So these are just a set of guidelines that have served me in my career transition. And, you know, I've done a lot of shifting in my career in the last decade to try and get myself into the right kind of position to set myself up for success and to find my way. And these are some of the tricks that I've used to really help myself, or even some reflection on some of the things that I've done or gone through, and certainly some things that I wish I had known, right, when I was getting out of school and doing my first sets of resumes, etc. So, but to be clear, again, what I have to say is subjective. You might hear different opinions from other people. No one is wrong. It's just what works for you, right? And so take these as guidelines as you continue to move forward. And that being said, just an interesting side note from Mariah's piece around telling your story. It's interesting because, like I said, and I know Mariah also told you, we both come from, you know, sort of film, TV, photography, media, etc. And when I was first transitioning, it was hard for me to let go of the awards, of the notoriety, of this hard career that I had put so much of myself into. And it took a minute to sort of let go of that ego, let go of that, you know, feeling the need to like prove, right, what I had done in that relevancy of that time of my life. And so you know, it was actually at a point where I was able to tell a unique story that really helped me propel that career. And so, as you know, I've talked to you a little bit about the fact that I was in all these different careers and doing all these different things. But the story that I ended up coming up with was that I've been a part of digital transformation since the day I walked off the stage of my undergrad, right? Whether that was working with, you know, the news industry to transition them from a time of analog and print media into web platforms and digital storytelling, to helping to digitally rebrand and speak to a new generation of millennial college-age students through a deep understanding of their needs and helping the university to promote themselves in a way that was relevant and interesting to that generation. So the way that I was able to talk about the things I did without specifically being like, I did 10,000 photo shoots, or I, did X, Y, and Z thing, right? The language that I was able to pull in from my storytelling into this new story around inviting the terminology and storytelling aspects of service design, of human-centered design, into a past of all of these things that were very relevant to what I was doing and all of the ways that I was a part of this transformation and drove those kinds of ways of thinking and outreach and focus groups and all this stuff, really helped me shape that story. And so as you have these elements of the story from Mariah, one of the things, we're going to start with is, if this ever progresses forward, come on, there we go. You get one shot to make a good impression, right? And so translating that story into your resume is going to help you get that interview, because you often don't get the chance to tell your story first. You have to show your story, right? And that's going to be through your resume and your portfolio. I am going to touch on portfolios, but I want you to know that portfolios are not my strength, but resumes, however, are. So we're going to talk about 3 parts of your resume, which is structure, design, and content. And I'm going to go through these very quickly. And if you'd like to be able to see more on it, there is a recording on my LinkedIn page around the anatomy of the resume. So you should always know, right? Your resume should be ever evolving. It should be about who you're trying to become. It should not be a direct reflection of who you are right now. No one takes a lateral move in a career unless there's a good reason. We all really want to be focused on what's next for us. And so your resume should be a reflection of the person you're becoming. And I know that's kind of an interesting concept, but it's really important, right? Because you want to be able to showcase, this is the role, this is the responsibility, this is the person I'm becoming in this moment, right? And so it should show a progression into who that person is. Also, there's 2 opportunities for you, especially a lot of you are career changers. There is a skills-based resume versus an experience-based resume. So definitely take a look at the different formats of resume types, because sometimes if you just don't have the right kind of experience to back this up, sometimes going through and designing your resume as a skills-based resume can help emphasize what you bring to the table more clearly. Thirdly, keep it concise. A resume and a CV are not the same thing. A CV is used for a lot of really good and important things. A CV, also known as curriculum vitae, is long and lengthy, and it includes everything from your publications to a deep dive into every tiny little thing that you've done to sort of showcase, a well-rounded history. But your resume should be a quick hit, something that people can determine whether or not you're the right kind of candidate to move forward into an interview round. So you want it to be your best foot forward, but certainly not, our resume is still relevant. Yes, resumes are still relevant, I would think. I mean, yes, a resume. So thinking about a resume, you can consider it also your LinkedIn page, right? Same thing. The same way that you want to concisely put the information into your resume should also concisely go into your LinkedIn. Simplify, right? One of the things I often talk about is, sometimes we want to put so much in there, but it's important to, compact some things, especially when a lot of us have a period of time where maybe we are freelancing or contracting, or we have a lot of project-based work that we're trying to put in there. I would definitely focus on how to categorize those things and how to keep it concise and simplified, so that way it doesn't look like you're jumping all over the place. And then the final thing is relevancy, right? You need to talk about your past in a way that speaks to what you're doing right now, right? So a big piece of that is knowing the language that we speak. Sorry about the ambulances. Knowing the language that we speak as designers, how we talk about our industry, and making that relevant in the work from your past, right? like speaking around the fact that in the media industry, I worked in a ton of digital transformation, not something that I would have said on my photography resume, but something that I certainly say on my resume having to do with my past. Next up is.
Can I ask about the asterisks that you put on the previous slide?
Sure. See if it'll go back.
If it doesn't, we can repeat it. Honesty is the best. Oh, that's the next slide. Honesty is the best strategy. Just don't share information that could hurt you. That was the asterisk.
I don't know why it's not going backwards.
Yes,
Oh,
there we
yeah.
have it.
Okay, sorry. Honesty is the best policy, but don't offer information that might hurt you. Oftentimes you want to put school project, or you might add a word or terminology or an experience that just doesn't set you up for success, right? It's a project. It doesn't necessarily have to be a school project. You don't have to call yourself out necessarily as a student on a project. You want to talk about the project and the relevancy of the work that you're doing, but utilize terminology and words that are going to support you rather than hinder you. If anyone asks, was this a school project? The answer is yes, of course it was a school project, but you don't necessarily have to say school project in blaringly large letters, right? It's important to talk about whether or not you were a teammate or if you worked on something singularly. But the answer is don't lie, but don't just blaringly offer the fact that only all of your relevant experience is our school projects, right? Try and showcase that you also have the ability to think critically and do the work, because a lot of our school projects are actually very relevant to the work that we do. It's where we do a lot of our learning. All right. So as far as resume design, length, a lot of the times you'll get a resume that is like someone with 2 years or 3 years of experience and they have a 3-page resume. I recommend that if you have 1 to 8 years of experience, you should have a 1-page resume. If you have over 8 years of experience, a 2-page resume. Keep it concise, keep it simple. This is not a CV. Design your resume. We are designers, everybody. A white-paged resume is not going to serve you as well as a resume that is interesting, showcases and highlights important elements of your work and your skills, and has an element of design to it. And then use your space wisely. I often recommend don't waste your time with precious things, like things like address. This is becoming a more global world anyway. It's just not something that you need on your resume. You can, fill that with relevant skills, relevant volunteering, etc. And Gina, yeah, we can answer some of those things at the end of the session, but I think yes, there's some ways to easily do that. So then I pull up an example of a past resume of mine, and you can see some of these interesting things. I use logos as a way to really highlight important and interesting elements to my resume. I use a colored sidebar and some coloring in my title. But you can see that there is, an overview at the top, my contact information, my education and certificates, a list of skills that are bucketed into very important and high-level categories, my list of experience, my past work summary. As you can see, this tiny, I don't know if you can see this, but this tiny little summary right here is 14 years of experience in a tiny little piece of my resume. And then I have a lot of my accomplishments. Those are either publications, public speaking, etc. And then I had a little bit of extra space. So I decided to put kind of an interesting client and project list. And then I did a bunch of the relevant and important volunteering that I do on the left-hand side. Now, your resume does not have to reflect this, but this is just an example of how you can put together an attractive and interesting, resume using design elements, but also making sure you have all the relevant pieces that are involved. So resume content, your overview and objectives should explain sort of what you're looking for, who you're trying to become, what you're trying to do. It should be an impressive few sentences. If you're going to have one, it better be really good. Skills, they should reflect the job requirements of jobs that you're applying to. If a job has a list of suggested requirements or skill sets or needs in terms of everything from your hard skills to your soft skills, Adobe Suite, Figma, InVision, right? Not that us as service designers use a lot of those things, but talking about your bucketed list of research capabilities, your bucketed list of service design or design methodologies, all of those things should be included. But the singular most important thing here is this should be a brag list. This should be one of the singular most important moments that you get the opportunity to talk about what is uniquely you, what you uniquely bring to the table, not what your team did, but what you did, right? I want to know what it is about you that makes you different and separate than everybody else that's applying for the same job. This is your opportunity to brag. This is your opportunity to say, I did this amazing and wild thing. This was my specific contribution, right, to this thing. If it's a skill, right, like I built 50, customer journey maps. That goes in your skills list, right? Put that in your customer journey mapping skills list. I want to know what it was that you did. We did all this research, but we were able to uncover this unique insight that allowed us to shift the direction of the project for X impact. And that's the second part. Your statements should be action, outcome, impact. I did this, which created this, that had this impact. And I know a lot of us are like, well, we don't often get to stick around to understand impact, or maybe it was a student project, so we don't know what impact. Impact is multiple things. Impact can be for a 20% cost savings, for a 10% decrease in overhead, but it can also be for an intended impact of creating more space in X community for those people to shine, right? That's a soft impact. Use your ability in here to talk about your intended impact on a person, a community, an output, a service, an experience, right? What were you intending to do with the impact of the work that you have done, right? There's always something that you are intending to do. So if you don't have a hard data impact, a percentage, a number, then use a soft one, right? Talk about what it was intending to do, right? And then I recommend, right, if you're uncomfortable bragging, spend some time with a close friend, right? And walk them through it and get them to push on you and get them to pull out from you the important things about what it was that you were doing. And then the fifth part was, talking about your accomplishments in volunteering, publications, speaking, volunteer work, ways that you give back to the community, highlighting these things and how you are a learner and a giver and a teacher in the world is an important thing. So I'm going to touch very, very briefly on portfolios. I'm not going to go into it very long because it's just not my strong suit, but the art of a carefully crafted story, again, an important way to distinguish yourself is not just through your resume, but also through your portfolio. I have a couple of high-level important pieces here that actually come through the anatomy of the resume and portfolio, again, on my LinkedIn page. These were provided by a coworker and friend of mine, Rathika. And so I pulled these in just for you guys to be able to see. But when we were talking with past students, talking about highlight 3 super strong, important case studies, display imagery, showcase the work and the complexity and the chaos, right, of the process, brag, and then showcase your storytelling skills by piecing together really important details, right? There's a list here and you can take a quick screenshot if you'd like. All right, always be connecting. Moving into presentation. Engaging with your interviewer is so important, and it can be the biggest difference between an interview gone right and an interview gone bad. Building rapport is singularly an important thing that is so important, right, to a really successful interview. You have to build a bond. You have to build some kind of a relationship. And I know it's often hard because we only get so much time. But here's the thing. We do this all the time in our interviews. We build rapport with all these people and these skill sets that we've built. So hone your interviewing skills, both inside your service design practice as you do your contextual and ethnographic based research, but also with your interviewer as you begin to work through some stuff. So I recommend something which is a mixture of storyboarding and the STAR method. For those of you who don't know, situation, task, action, results is the STAR method, often used by organizations such as Amazon. And then I kind of melded it into a storytelling framework. This sort of begins with so what I want you to do is to really think about timing. There is nothing worse than boring your interviewer to death and also being bored while you're trying to give your own presentation. So take a moment and really think through what case study or case studies you're going to be talking about, and then frame it and time it for yourself, right? And so I recommend, kind of a 1 minute situation explanation, a 1 minute result explanation, and then 4 sort of really important 2 minute spaces where you can talk about some really important things. In here you can see, right, you want to really call out after you've shaped, the context of the story and given the foundation and the why, right? You want to go into 4 main brag points about this project. What it was that you specifically did, some of the actions that helped to move the project forward, and how it achieved and or solved something, right? And you want to be able to showcase some visual work, but also be able to talk through the story of that element of tying in those unique aspects of who you are, the unique aspects of what you contributed, and also how it impacted and created value in the project work that you were doing. So I recommend that each case study that you serve is no more than a 10-minute explanation. And I do also recommend that you take time throughout this process to actually engage and interface with your interviewer. Have open-ended questions prepared, make eye contact, be ready to ask, questions about them, but also leave time and energy to engage throughout, right? Sort of like you can be talking about one aspect of your project and say, is this relevant to anything that you've seen in the work that you guys do at your organization? Is this, is there something, have you seen something like this before? Have you experienced with this kind of topic or content, right? If you take the time while you're presenting to also engage at the same time, it can not only make for a better and more engaging presentation, but also it gives them the chance to potentially give you context that is important to understand how what you're doing or what your work could be that is relevant to the position that they're looking for. So if you're able to give that back and forth and give the interviewer time and space to potentially help shape or guide some questions or thinking that they have, then you might be able to tell a more relevant story. So again, another piece of that is be ready to be flexible and be ready to pivot in an interview to be able to potentially meet a question or take a different turn if it seems like the interview is looking for something specific. I do recommend having the ability to make people laugh. I know a lot of us get nervous. I know a lot of us do struggle sometimes with humor, but if you can bring levity to a situation and to an interview, it often makes for a better bond. And finally, be polite, follow up, send a thank you note, right? These things are really important, and though sometimes antiquated, leave a really good impression. All right, and I know we're almost done, but I wanted to touch on one more thing, which was just talking about money, right? As you move into the interview gets you in the door. The door opens, you get the interview. You create a great bond with the people that you're interviewing with, and poof, you have a job offer. So now what? Not to give a shameless plug to Mark, but things like the salary guide that he works on every year, Glassdoor, right? Do your research, understand the range of the roles, right, that you're potentially looking for. Know it, have the idea in the back of your mind. Secondly, never give a number. Oh my goodness. They're going to try, right? Every recruiter in the world is going to say, so what were you looking for? That's a big no. Don't do it. Don't say it. Don't give a number. Say, there's a lot of ways that you can defer here, and defer politely. Be like, I'm still doing my research to understand the location or the remote aspects to this role. But what would really help me is to understand the range of the salary that you're offering for this position. If you're able to defer smoothly and ask for a range, then you're better able to understand. They have to sort of provide that to you if you ask. So, and I know it can be a hard conversation, right? Money makes a lot of us uncomfortable. And, but do yourself a favor and try not to tell recruiters what it is that you're asking for. Another thing, know what your bottom line is and stick to it, right? If you are like, you've done your research, you recognize this is, you really can't go below this to take this thing, stick to your guns, right? And, but also have a list of negotiables, right? Not every company can pay exactly the same, right? So try to be aware of that. So what one super large organization or consulting firm can pay is not the same as what a smaller business can pay. But there's also variables, right? Everything from medical benefits, PTO, budgets for, conferences, et cetera, right? So just know your list of areas that you have ability to negotiate with and what your bottom line are. And the last thing is, be realistic. Know what experience you bring to the table. Don't undersell yourself, but don't oversell yourself either, right? Know where you truly sit in your range of experience that you bring to the table, and and what you can truly ask for. There's nothing worse than being caught in the trap of being underpaid and undervalued, but sometimes there's also the trap of wanting, more than what you can truly really ask for with the experience that you bring to the table. So, know your range, know what you're worth, know what you can ask for, but also know that your potential, what you can do. Trust and believe in yourself, and know that you know what's right for you, and keep moving forward. Don't let other people tell you what you can and cannot do, right? So, and as I said before, be resilient, right? Be tenacious. These things are so important. Don't give up. I know how hard it can be. I know how difficult it is sometimes to work through these things. But keep moving forward, and don't let the naysayers get you down. When I went back for my master's degree, my family was like, oh, why don't you get a business degree or a law degree or a blah, blah, blah degree? And I was like, God, why the hell would I do that to myself? But, the thing that I really wanted was this degree, and, I didn't get a lot of support, and not a lot of people believed in me, and I did it anyway. And then I just worked hard, and I worked hard to get to the first job, to the second job, to the third job. So, keep working at it and don't give up. So, takeaways are: have the confidence to believe in yourself, truly know what you have done and what you offer and what you bring to the table. Showcase your skills in a smart and concise story. And it's about current capabilities and potential. Connect, interact, build rapport, network, use your storytelling skills and wits to engage with an interviewer like they're just another person, because they are. And, you know, this is a fun process. Interviewing can be fun. So treat it that way, believe that it's fun, look at it as another way to gain experience and another way to make a new friend. And it'll help change your perspective on how you go in and approach these things. So